The Wakandan people are, in a word, amazing. With their incredibly advanced tech brought about by their excess supply of Vibranium and their long lineage of superpowered kings, the formerly secret nation is filled to the brim with amazing inventions and fantastically powerful individuals. Whether they use their knowledge of Vibranium to create fantastic gadgets, are simply excellently trained warriors, or have enhanced themselves beyond human capacity, the Wakandans are a force to be reckoned with. And just to prove that point, I'm now going to list some of the most powerful Wakandans to ever grace the pages of Marvel Comics. Now, you all know that Wakanda is a hidden nation, but did you know that it's also a space empire? T'Challa sure didn't, but it's true. Thanks to some wibbly-wobbly timestone shenanigans that will probably take a whole separate video to explain, ancient Wakandans found their way into outer space thousands of years ago. This in turn caused a divergent evolution of Wakandan culture and technology spanning several galaxies. And it's here that we meet Emperor N'Jadaka. A warrior who was betrayed by the current emperor and sent on a suicide mission, N'Jadaka only survived by bonding with a symbiote, whose powers he then used to take the title of emperor for himself, upon which he began a much grander quest for power. He enslaved T'Challa in his Vibranium mines and drained all the powers of Bast the Wakandan Panther god, and would have done the same to every other Wakandan deity if he had not ultimately been stopped in this attempt. And though he was eventually defeated, his consciousness transferred itself to his symbiote, which then attempted to take over the body of another very powerful Wakandan. Cause if the name N'Jadaka sounded familiar to you, then there's a very good reason. It's the Wakandan birth name of one Erik Killmonger. MCU fans already know his origin story as the son of an exiled Wakandan man who grew bitter towards the royal family and sought to take the country for his own as revenge. But in the comics, Killmonger is actually even more unhinged, powerful, and terrifying than he is in the movies. On top of his impressive fighting skill and the physical enhancements he gets from a synthetic version of the magical herb that gives T'Challa his powers, Erik also has access to the Resurrection Altar, which is a shrine imbued with alien energies that can be used to resurrect the dead, though not without mutating them somewhat. This is certainly the case with Erik's Death Regiments, a small cabal of minor villains that he commands, including such charming names as King Cadaver, Baron Macabre, Salamander Cruel, and Venom, who is not to be confused with a certain spider baddie, of course. While I'm at it, I would dedicate a segment to his former lover, Madame Slay, who commanded leopards to do her bidding, but it's not really super clear whether or not she's actually Wakandan, so go ahead and consider this an honorable mention. Bottom line is, this guy is considered T'Challa's greatest foe for a lot of reasons. Of course, we can't bring up powerful Wakandans without talking about the man himself, King T'Challa. You know you're a big deal when your very first appearance has you absolutely wiping the floor with the Fantastic Four, only to then become one of Marvel's most prominent heroes. Naturally, he is an incredibly skilled fighter like any Wakandan warrior, but with the enhancements given to him by the heart-shaped herb, he becomes basically the pinnacle of human potential on top of gaining impressive animal senses. Add to this his perfect willingness to apply any new Wakandan tech to his Black Panther suit, his political power, and the great respect he commands in the Marvel superhero community, and you got yourself someone you do not want to underestimate. Oh, and he's also kind of the king of the dead now and is essentially a necromancer on top of everything else. So, yeah, that might be worth a mention. Now, T'Challa may have more tech up the wazoo than you can shake a stick at, and he may even be all juiced up on natural performance enhancers, but even he struggles against the forces of nature. And unfortunately for him, his foe Tetu practically is nature. Not satisfied with Wakandan academics, a young Tetu decided to abandon civilization and instead journey into the wilderness of Wakanda in order to attain knowledge beyond what schools could teach him. Here, he found the forces of nature and learned to bend them to his will. And so, returning as a self-proclaimed shaman, Tetu is now intent on reshaping the tech-dependent Wakanda into a more spiritually aligned nation. And as far as he's concerned, that means the royal family has got to go. Leading a rebel group known as the People, Tetu has tried on several occasions to turn the very forces of nature against T'Challa, and has only barely been taken down each time. Because, really, how do you fight against a walking, talking natural disaster? Okay, real quick, what's the name of T'Challa's sister? If you said Shuri, you're right! In this reality, that is. But somewhere out there in the vastness of the multiverse, there is one reality where the correct answer to that question is Doctor Doom. On Earth 2301, which is probably better known as the Marvel Mangaverse, T'Challa was afraid of his siblings taking his chance to succeed his father as the next Black Panther away from him. And so he decided to rather horrifically beat the ever-loving crap out of all of them just to make sure they didn't get in his way. Embittered by this, his younger sister T'Challa left Wakanda and sought to learn powerful magic for herself, all with the intention of returning later and laying the smackdown on her older brother. Her studies led her to Latveria and into the arms of one Victor Von Doom, who taught her all of his magic, and paid the price dearly when she killed him and took all of his resources for herself. Yeah, I would say that makes her pretty freaking powerful. And since we're talking about T'Challa's siblings anyway, let's turn our attention towards Shuri. Shuri was always an active princess, eager to take up the mantle of Black Panther for herself if she ever got the chance. And sure enough, she did get her chance after T'Challa was injured fighting the Cabal, after which Bast the Panther God chose her as the next Black Panther, all while she was also acting as the first ruling queen of Wakanda. Man, talk about a promotion! As the Black Panther, Shuri was somewhat more ruthless than her brother, having less reservations about killing opponents or acting to protect her pride than T'Challa usually did. But she was nonetheless a great hero who sacrificed her life fighting a group known as the Black Order. While T'Challa worked to resurrect her, Shuri's soul went to a realm known as the Jalia, and by the time she returned to life, this had granted her a whole new slew of magical abilities, such as turning into a flock of birds, transforming her body into stone, changing size, communicating with animals, and even raising the dead. And on top of all of this, her brilliant scientific mind from the MCU has been integrated into her character in the comics, so by now she really doesn't need to be envious of T'Challa and his Black Panther title anymore. She is a hell of a powerhouse without it. In the movies, we only got a bit of a brief look at the white gorilla cult's fearsome leader, M'Baku the Man-Ape. But in the comics, this guy is easily among the Black Panther's most fearsome foes. As a former officer of the Wakandan militia, M'Baku eventually found himself disagreeing heavily with his king's rule. Deciding to usurp the kingdom while T'Challa was out of the country for a bit, M'Baku hunted and killed one of the magical Wakandan white gorillas, and proceeded to bathe in its blood and eat its flesh in order to be blessed with its power. It's pretty gnarly stuff actually. But it worked! Wearing his slain prey's hide as a suit, M'Baku became the Man-Ape, now possessing incredible physical strength and durability. Once Black Panther returned, M'Baku challenged him for the role of ruler of Wakanda, intending to bring the nation back to the more primitive belief system of the white gorilla cult, which included lovely rituals like human sacrifice. It probably comes as no surprise that M'Baku lost that fight, but that hasn't stopped him from trying again and again and again, using every underhanded tactic that he can think of on top of his massive strength. Just like how T'Challa has a half-sister in Shuri, it turns out he also has a half-brother named Jakarra, who was born from a romance between King T'Chaka and a Wakandan spy named Martina, who left Wakanda and raised her son abroad. Yeah, to say the least, King T'Chaka really got around in his youth. Unfortunately, Martina died in service and ended up leaving her son behind in America, who at some point learned of his birthright and traveled to Wakanda to claim it. When he didn't get what he wanted immediately, he fell in with the Hyena clan, which was trying to dig deeper into the properties of Vibranium. Stabbing himself with a Vibranium dagger that had absorbed some strange energies from a geothermal pipe, Jakarra then transformed himself into a monstrous creature who battled against T'Challa and Storm of the X-Men. Jakarra's mutated body was not just immensely strong, but had the same energy-absorbing properties of Vibranium, making him pretty difficult to take down. He was only defeated when our two heroes threw him into a volcano, where the volcanic energy overload essentially paralyzed him, supposedly keeping him in stasis to this very day. Solomon Prey, introduced in the Panther's Prey miniseries back in the early 90s, was one of the few Wakandans to leave the nation and study at Harvard in America, after which he became an official Wakandan ambassador in the US. After getting involved with a woman named Tansika, who already held a grudge against T'Challa, Solomon returned to Wakanda and used his political connections to establish an underground drug empire for himself. Not satisfied with just raking in drug money, he later had a scientist named Dr. Kansa enhance him with cells from the pteranodons native to the dinosaur-infested Valley of the Serpents. The result? Solomon grew a massive pair of wings and a set of powerful claws and became a terrifying pteranodon man, all too eager to slash at Black Panther once he came around to put a stop to his little drug empire. Solomon was killed at the end of this one arc, which is a bit of a shame since he certainly strikes a pretty unique figure among Black Panther's foes. Plus, I gotta say, I kinda wanna see him hanging out with Sauron. I'm sure those two would have plenty to talk about. Before T'Challa became the superhero Black Panther that we know today, the title was given to many other great warriors and rulers. And among them we find his father, T'Chaka. A ruler so beloved that he was often referred to as T'Chaka the Great, he was the one to insist that Wakanda needed to advance its tech as much as possible, while still respecting their old culture and the magic within it, playing a big part in making Wakanda into what it is today. Today, T'Chaka is mostly known for getting killed by Ulysses Klaue and thus giving T'Challa the motivation to become the next Black Panther. But don't think that means the old king didn't have a superhero career of his own back in the World War II days. He was given just as much strength from the heart-shaped herb as T'Challa after all. And he was more than happy to assist Captain America, Nick Fury and the Howling Commandos when they came to Wakanda to do battle against Baron Strucker and the forces of Hydra, which included a collection of minor villains like Master Man, Warrior Woman, White Gorilla and Armless Tiger Man. Yes, really. Of course, due to the passage of time in real life, this story arc is now credited to T'Chaka's own father, King Shuri, because comic book time is just funny like that. But the real ones know that King T'Chaka did all of it first. The Black Panther title has been passed down for many generations. But how many exactly? Well, as it turns out, all the way back to the Stone Age. Mosi, whose name very fittingly is Swahili for firstborn, lived 1 million years BC, where he was the first human to be blessed by Bast the Panther God and given the heart-shaped herb in order to become the first Black Panther. Wearing a Black Panther hide, Mosi fiercely protected his Wakandan tribesmen when cosmic energy started bringing attention from various otherworldly creatures to Earth, such as the Brood, the Phoenix Force, and even the Asgardians. As a result, the Stone Age Avengers were formed, consisting of Odin, the first mutant known as Firehair, the sorcerer Agamotto, the very first Ghost Rider, Stone Age equivalents of Iron Fist and Starbrand, and of course, Mosi. And if you need more proof that Mosi was a badass, he was the first mortal man to ever be deemed worthy enough to lift Mjolnir, which is something that really impressed good old Odin at the time. Oh, and the gang also beat the crap out of a freaking Celestial, so don't go thinking they don't stack up to any of the modern teams. Boy, T'Chaka just loves to have kids. 3 different children with 3 different mothers just wasn't enough for him. No, he had to adopt too. After his parents died in a plane crash close to the Wakandan border, T'Chaka was quick to adopt the only survivor, a young white boy who came to be known only as Hunter. Treated as his legitimate child by T'Chaka, Hunter grew up fiercely loyal and protective of his adopted country. But he was also well aware that his white skin meant that the Wakandan people would never truly trust him, and that he could never take the role of Black Panther. Instead, he devoted himself to training and became the White Wolf, leader of the Wakandan secret police force known as the Hattusarase, which are extremely skilled warriors wearing bulletproof battlesuits with impressive cloaking technology. That's right, MCU Bucky fans, the White Wolf nickname is a loner. Hunter had it first. You'd think Hunter and T'Challa could live together peacefully like this, but when T'Challa became king, he disbanded the Hattusarase, and most of its members fled the country and became mercenaries. Despite this though, Hunter would still come to the country's aid when it needed him. At least until the day Hunter snapped and attempted to kill T'Challa, intending to finally claim the role as Black Panther for himself and take over the throne. And as T'Challa defeated him, Hunter was then fully rejected, and was told in no uncertain terms that there was no longer any place for him in Wakanda. As already stated, Wakanda is famous for its incredible tech, but not everyone thinks the country's reliance on technology is a great idea. Especially not the Marube tribe. Tosin Oduye, a young man born into this tribe, spent most of his life observing the many conflicts taking place within the Wakandan cities from afar, and came to view the power struggles within with quite a bit of disdain. Instead of growing up surrounded by technology like other Wakandans, Tosin and his fellow tribesmen found other ways to use the metal to their advantage. Over time, they developed a technique to use it to make empowering tattoos, with the intent of giving themselves the strength and energy manipulation abilities necessary to defend Wakanda in case a war broke out. And well, it did! Tosin declared himself a new Wakandan hero when his tribe was attacked, and eventually formed a somewhat uneasy alliance with Shuri when she was being hunted by the Hattusarase. We've mentioned the Hattusarase a few times up to this point, but let's not forget about the Black Panther's personal bodyguards, the Dora Milaje, and especially their leader, Okoye. Consisting of top-trained women from every tribe within Wakanda, the Dora Milaje traditionally represents the best that each tribe has to offer, while at the same time functioning as a collection of potential suitors to the king. But even within this collection of extremely well-trained warriors, Okoye stands out as truly exceptional, thanks to her impressive combat skill and fierce loyalty to the Wakandan king. This is despite the fact that T'Challa has made it perfectly clear that he has no romantic interest in her or any of the other Dora Milaje. Okoye will still dutifully do her job. This loyalty and her impressive combat skill has led to Okoye going on a few adventures of her own, like the time she helped Spider-Man fight against Morris Bench, the Hydro Man. And at the moment, she's the leader of the super team known as the Agents of Wakanda, a collection of ragtag superheroes handpicked by T'Challa himself after he became chairman for the Avengers. Not bad for a bodyguard, huh? While Okoye was quick to accept that T'Challa will never see her as a future wife, her fellow Dora Milaje member Nakia was not. Yeah, MCU viewers know Nakia is just a perfectly nice friend to T'Challa, but in the comics, things went south for her pretty fast. Despite T'Challa not wanting to take any woman from the Dora Milaje for a wife, Nakia still had romantic feelings for him that eventually developed into full-blown stalkerish obsession. This got bad enough that Nakia even attempted to have Monica Lynn, T'Challa's American ex-girlfriend, killed, which in turn got her exiled from Wakanda. And she didn't exactly take it well. After getting involved with Erik Killmonger and going for a quick ride on the Resurrection Altar, Nakia rebranded herself as the supervillain Malice, all too eager to get revenge on the man who spurned her affections and the country that kicked her out. So basically, she's like a scarily well-trained psycho ex-girlfriend, just without the girlfriend part. These are just the ones that pose immediate physical threats in a fight. Don't count out characters like Queen Ramonda and her immense political power. Although, as much as I'm excited to see Wakanda at war with Atlantis, man, it would be cool to see some of these guys on the big screen too. Oh well, we can always dream.